The press conferences are over and the countdown has begun. It's time for E3 to begin in earnest. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to GameSpot stage here on the show floor. I'm Chris Waters, one of the hosts that'll be guiding you through a crazy array of demos all next 3 days long. And another one of them is joining me right over here, Mr. Danny O'Dwyer.
It's what unfortunately everyone couldn't see was Tim Schafer run over and do a dance behind
course.
your camera when we went
The
live.
dude doesn't have a game at E3. He still just shows up to start messing around with people.
What are you doing here?
That's the magic of E3, ladies and gentlemen.
It's crazy.
Danny,
Doors just open. Everyone's coming in.
Danny, it's day one.
Yes.
But let's not act like we haven't been at this for like 2 weeks already.
It's day one.
Yeah.
We just had 2 days of nonstop work.
Press conferences galore. Kicked it off with Bethesda. Fallout, big story from there.
Not only did they show Fallout, they showed Fallout for like 30 minutes.
So much Fallout.
Yeah.
And then they decided to rob my sleep hours by releasing that app. Have you been playing that thing?
Yep.
You got it there?
This is by far the worst idea ever, to have like a people management simulator happening during E3.
During E3.
It's like the most stressful thing in the world. They're all dying at the moment. Fallout Shelter.
You gotta call them back from the wasteland when you're gonna not check in on them for like 5 hours because they're gonna die. They're gonna run into a giant ant. They're gonna die. That's a pro tip.
I got no electricity. I got hardly any food and water. There's babies everywhere, but none of them can work for me yet. So
they're not producing anything.
No.
Babies. The hell?
I think I'm the only person who didn't choose 420 as well. I got Vault 86.
Yeah, solid number choice.
Represent.
Dude, so yesterday, Microsoft, EA, Ubisoft, Sony, the gamut of press conferences.
Yeah.
Let's talk Microsoft. What was the jam from
Microsoft
that?
actually was pretty good. In light of what's happened afterwards, it kind of feels like, you know, that they were second place, and I guess but they probably are. We'll get to Sony later, but Microsoft's first party lineup was really good, and one of the things you have to remember is that Sony showed off a lot of really interesting games, but if we're talking about 2014 in games, Microsoft has them totally beat. Like, there's loads of games coming out in Q3, Q4, exclusives for the Xbox One. Sony's got nothing. Microsoft have the Gears HD things coming out.
Halo 5 Guardians.
Halo 5 Guardians.
Yeah.
They've showed out, they actually leaned into their VR stuff in a real way, like they showed HoloLens
Oh
working.
my goodness, HoloLens looked incredible.
That stuff's crazy.
It's just like that, and they showed it on a table that looks like any table. It wasn't like this setup studio kind of thing.
Yes.
It was like, hey, look, you got a table, you could have a Minecraft castle.
And guess what? They managed to figure out a way of selling their, I guess that's augmented reality, not live, but they managed to, like, their future tech, you could see how it worked, and that's something that, like, Oculus still struggles with, is like over the internet, like, how do we show people what it's like when you've got these friggin' things on your face?
Yeah, when you've got them, because you're still consuming it through a 2D screen, which is fundamentally not what VR is all about. One of the highlights from that for me was Recore.
Yes.
A new game they announced. It was that did the thing where it's like, hey, here's an adventurer and her trusty dog. They're going to go on adventures. Oh, there's going to be peril. It's all going to end happily ever. No, they killed the dog.
Yeah.
They killed the dog in the trailer. And then, of course, it's not actually a dog. It's like a little robot core thing. So that was a cool sort of...
I'm looking forward to that. That's Keiji Inafune sort of making it like a guy behind, obviously, Mega Man and whatnot, Mighty Number 9, but also a load of really good games on Xbox systems, Dead Rising, Lost Planet, like big budget games. So it's really interesting to see another franchise from him. He's actually on this stage in about, I think, 3 or 4 hours' time. I'm talking to him, so I can't wait to grill him about that.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, we've got a pretty stacked lineup. One that's coming up in just about 40 minutes that I'm really excited for was from the Sony press conference, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yes.
The sort of tribal woman hunting robot animals.
Yeah.
But like...
She treats them like animals.
Yeah, treating them with compassion. Like there's this sort of holistic sort of ecosystem kind of thing going on that really subverts the man versus machine. That's like, machine is usually the other, the like intruder, but nah, like this is just the way the world is.
I think this is a much more interesting fiction than what Guerrilla have been working with. Like Killzone had some interesting ideas in it, like the sort of future, like Nazism essentially.
Yeah.
But I think what they're doing here, I'm really happy to see them break away from the Killzone franchise. Honestly, Shadowfall was almost not a Killzone game. It kind of feels like it's just a different type of first-person shooter. And I think mechanically it was really interesting. But to see them like actually take a step back, make a third-person game, it kind of feels like a mixture of like Enslaved in terms of its narrative and presentation. And then I keep forgetting the name, but what was the name of that game where you're shooting around on rockets on your ankles?
Oh, Vanquish.
Vanquish, yeah. Like wonderful game that not many people picked up.
There's some quick maneuvering and weapon switching, which was sort of a hallmark of the Vanquish sort of action. Here, dodging the giant, I don't know, T-Rex thing.
Yeah,
it's so cool. That's one of the great things about E3 is getting to see creators that you have these associations with, this history with, trying something new and getting to flex creativity outside of the bounds of really anything and come up with these fascinating new ideas.
And for a long time, I think Guerrilla had this, they could kind of lean on their graphics in a way that perhaps they didn't. I guess they probably spend a lot of time making their games look as beautiful as they do, and this looks great too, but I always felt that the games were mechanically rather uninteresting. Like some stuff in like it was a decent shooter, but there wasn't really much going on. With a game like this, it looks like they've really sort of decided to dive into gameplay complexity. Hopefully, anyway. In terms of the combat, it looks a lot more interesting than Killzone Shadowfall does.
And I'm fascinated to ask them, is there going to be multiplayer? Because Killzone multiplayer was stellar, and have them say, well, we're not talking about that at this time. Of course, Horizon was like the thing we did not expect from the Sony press conference. There are some other things that we maybe in our heart of hearts, maybe in our like wildest forum fantasies dreamed about happening.
Adam Boyes was just before we went live was here with like the biggest smile on his face.
He's on cloud nine, man. He's walking around. Final Fantasy VII Remake, not just HD skins. Like they're doing the 343 Industries Halo anniversary treatment. Fully, like the new cutscenes look gorgeous. And then of course they kicked off the show with The Last Guardian.
Yeah, it's to get one of them is interesting. To get, especially the Final Fantasy stuff's crazy considering what happened at the Sony event back in December when they showed off their like, oh, we're doing a Final Fantasy, but it's just a straight up like port basically for PC and eventually the PS4. I don't actually know if it's come out on PS4 yet. But yeah, to show off The Last Guardian, to show it off, to have the creative leads there, to show off a demo that was very similar to what we saw all those years ago. It must be 4 or 5 years ago maybe at this stage. But then to actually have it look like it looks really good. It looks like a next-gen game. Because if you go back and look at that other one, it has that sort of eco shadow sort of. It doesn't have that crispness.
Yeah.
But I really like. I think mechanically the gameplay demo we saw. You said it made a very good point in our post show yesterday that it was a pretty rudimentary puzzle. I think Peter's going to see it behind closed doors today. So hopefully he can come and tell us a bit more about it. But
yeah, we'll definitely
it's great
have more to talk
just
about.
to see it.
Yeah, but to see it and to be like, oh, okay, this thing still exists. It's not vaporware. It's not a ghost in the wind somewhere. They've really invested a lot, it seems, in feather physics over the years.
Good money in that feather physics, apparently.
But certainly The Last Guardian, one of the big stories out of E3 2015 already. And then the end of their trifecta of like checking off long-desired games.
Yeah.
Shenmue 3,
man,
definitely the most sort of obscure of the bunch. And then they didn't announce the game proper. They announced, hey, we're making this game, but there's a Kickstarter.
Yes.
And we're asking for $2 million, which is like nowhere near enough to fund what the game was back in 1990, whenever.
Apparently adjusted for inflation, Shenmue 2 cost somewhere in the realm of $60 million.
Yeah.
Do you want to see what the total is as of right now? We're less than 24 hours away or later, and it's currently at $2.6 million.
$2.6 million.
Which is pretty crazy.
Is it a little weird to you for Sony to come out and be like, hey, you guys like games, we're going to show you games.
Yeah.
Now pay us to make this game for you.
There must be something going on here. Like we've seen with the number of Kickstarters now at this stage that getting some sort of public backing, getting that early investment leads to them securing publishing, which then leads to them getting a bunch of money for marketing and development. We don't know what the relationship between Sony and this project is. It's clear that there is some because they went on their stage and did it. Whether or not, like, there's weird things. Like none of the stretch goals include a boxed copy of this game on PS4, so it's kind of vague. There was a rumor last week that Sony were going to do this, that they were going to announce a Kickstarter for Shenmue 3, but that they were going to be like sort of shadow backing it if it did well. So it's already crushed it.
Yeah.
Like there's 31 days left on the bloody thing and it's already beaten its goals. It's probably going to be the most successful Kickstarter of all time. I think it's probably like the fastest for the amount of money. But what that means, we don't really know yet.
Yeah, I mean, even earlier this year with the Castlevania Kickstarter, sort of the spiritual successor to Castlevania, Igarashi said, 90% of this game is funded. I just need the show of faith
Yes.
from backers, the interest. And so, yeah, it's Kickstarter continues to evolve as a really kind of interesting way for games to come into being and get funded and get attention. And then this morning, of course, Nintendo kicked it off with their second event this week.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because the Treehouse stuff just seems to keep going. So I don't know. Like the event on was it Sunday? They had the Nintendo World Championships.
Yep,
that was pretty good. Lil Wheat represent, killing it. He's got a career in shoutcasting lined up for him.
All set. And then this morning was the Reggie Iwata shenanigans in the video. I think
puppets.
they turned into some Star Fox characters. Star Fox Zero is one of the pillars standing over here in the Nintendo booth, just beyond the reach of our cameras.
Trust us.
Also posted up there, we've got Yoshi's Woolly World and Zelda Triforce Adventures. Is that what it says?
Heroes.
Yeah,
I was interviewing Tony
lean around the
Hawk.
pole.
I was interviewing Tony Hawk while that was on, so I've still yet to see that stuff.
Oh, yeah,
I
like
saw
you
some
do.
of the Star Fox.
You're just interviewing Tony Hawk.
I know. I caught a bit of the square. I know, right? He was literally sitting right here. He warmed this
on
part
your
of
lap.
the couch for me.
It was a very intimate moment.
And he's going to be on the show as well in just a couple of hours' time, talking about Pro Skater 5. But yeah, from what I heard upstairs, Nintendo, it was great to see Star Fox. It's always good to see a bit of Zelda. Like they told us, they telegraphed that they're not going to have the new Wii U Zelda game.
Yep.
I think that's a shame. I think, with all the sort of massive games we saw, we've got those IGN jokers walking past us. With all those big games we saw from the other publishers, manufacturers, it was a little bit disappointing that they didn't have a massive sort of showing, but,
Well, what, and that's interesting to think about because they're not showing the Zelda at E3, but this E3 is no longer the only tentpole place where publishers are going to come and show off their big reveals, their big exclusives, their first-party stuff, their bombshell news.
Well, like Gamescom, we've already, Microsoft had a murderer's row of games that people are looking forward to that they weren't going to show, and that they're saying, Scalebound's not going to be here, we'll show it then. Remedy aren't even here, so they're going to be showing off their crazy Quantum Break game at Gamescom as well. Game coverage has changed so much over the years, with just there was a time when GameSpot was the only, we've been doing this 18 years. GameSpot's been
we're on to
covering
19
E3
now, yeah.
So it's changed so much, and not only has it changed in terms of the way you can get access to this stuff. Obviously, we're still the best, but the amount of news we get. So there's been this recurring sort of conversation about E3 is it doesn't have that big Oscars kind of power behind it anymore. But you wouldn't know, man. Fuck me this year.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's still a pretty big deal. Yeah, I did I did an interview on NPR this morning about VR versus AR because that stuff. It's always interesting to see what stories from E3. It still is sort of a lightning rod for mainstream press attention.
Yes.
What stories sort of carry out to the broader market? And VR and AR is kind of one this year. Although I was surprised that we didn't see more of a VR push. I mean, Microsoft name-dropped Oculus, and they're working with Valve.
Yeah.
But Oculus's press conference was last week. Not a big showing here so far.
No, and Morpheus at Sony was barely mentioned at all. They said, here's a sizzle reel of indie games you'll be able to play.
Here's some games, you can play it here, but I think that with VR not really coming to market till next year, Oculus is announced for early next year, and I think maybe Morpheus has not even announced a time. I got to imagine fall next year at the earliest.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're still maybe figuring out the way to market that to consumers because, like we were saying earlier, it's kind of hard to market it. And, you and I can only do so much to describe the experience.
Exactly. It's different for us because we get to play with these toys all the time. I think everyone was talking for the longest time about 2015 being the year for virtual reality. I kind of feel like it's actually probably 2016 once the Oculus is out. Microsoft don't really know what they're doing. They mentioned, as you said, they mentioned Oculus. They also mentioned Valve VR. They also mentioned HoloLens. We do a lot of this stuff talking to CBS affiliate radio stations, and when you're trying to communicate to people the mass market, which is what they all need to do to sell this stuff, what their big push is, it's still looking in 5-6 different directions. There's no one way there's no rough focal point for virtual reality.
I think this is the big year for VR for game developers.
Yes.
The Game Developers Conference in San Francisco in March, VR everywhere you look.
Totally, yep.
But then for consumers, it's still got to be a ways off. It's got to be next year. Hopefully, we'll see some more because VR is pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, I think the HoloLens stuff actually I find very interesting because this is almost like an application software at this stage. A lot of what Microsoft have been showing off outside of the video game space has been interesting. So for them to basically take their their little diamond here, Minecraft, which is, you think of all the people who buy Windows products, they all have kids now, and the kids are all playing this one video game. And just look at this, like just no clipping your face.
You're just looking in there, like that's the camera dipping in there with the HoloLens on top. And so do you think, when you saw this, was that the moment that it all made sense? The $2 billion price tag for Minecraft from Microsoft?
If they can sell some augmented reality headsets off, but I'm sure that'll help.
Oh,
What it did was it outside of the Minecraft thing, it's definitely a proof of concept for them to be able to show that, you can basically create these, you can bring video games into your own little world. Like, regardless of what this does for the future of pornography, video games are going to be super interesting.
Absolutely.
Just popping up in your living room.
It's a whole different tech frontier in a way that new consoles could never be, because it's a whole different visual interface. And
I felt like this is like cheating as well. Like, you can just straight up look no clip through entire levels and just like see where everyone is in the junk.
whatever happened to just digging a hole in the ground and finding out what was below there?
Exactly.
All right, Danny. Well, we're queuing up to have about 6 hours of demos here on the stage. We're kicking off with Black Ops 3, and then going on to Horizon Until Dawn. Those are two of my two games I'm really excited to kick off. Later on, you are coming on stage.
Yeah.
Who you got? You've already talked about Tony Hawk.
Yes, Tony Hawk got Aaron Greenberg from Microsoft. I'm going to grill him about what he thought about the Sony conference last night.
I'm sure he'll love to talk about that.
Yeah, I got Tony Hawk. KJ Inafune is coming on. I've also got one of the he's on for the new one. He's not on for the old one. So Mighty Number 9. Somebody from Funcom's on for that as well. I think I start with Guitar Hero Live.
Guitar Hero Live,
which I think I can say now. We played at the office a couple of weeks ago.
Did you get a chance to get with the new fret buttons?
It's really cool that for people who don't know Guitar Hero, who've never played them before, and for people who are like fans of the series, it's a whole new, like, it's, remember like learning how to like type on a keyboard for the first time.
Yeah.
Or play Guitar Hero.
Get
it's
your, like,
new again.
Hands on the neck.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like, oh, I play Guitar Hero, I can do this. It's like, oh yeah. And then there's all this CG people shouting at you.
Yeah, hand cramps.
Yeah, I like it. It's like the same with Tony Hawk. It's an excuse to go back. It's a real good time for some of these franchises to come back, I think. So I'm really looking forward to that.
It's going to be a wonderful lineup today here, and this is just our first day of 3 days broadcasting from the GameSpot stage here on the E3 show floor. Danny O'Dwyer is going to be hosting. I'm going to be hosting. Lucy James from GameSpot UK is going to be hosting. We hope you folks stick with us the whole time. It's going to be awesome.